So good morning. Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
All right. So we had discussed yesterday about ramjets and pulse jets. So ramjet engines and pulse jet engine. So we will try to understand this ramjet engine better by solving a numerical problem. Okay. This type of problems you can expect in the exam. So this also is from one of the previous exams. This problem. So the problem states that there is a ramjet engine with a convergent divergent nozzle which is operating with the following parameters. Okay, so certain parameter values are given, and the ramjet operates with these parameters. And by stating that it is using a convergent divergent nozzle, it means that the exhaust will be at the ambient condition, ambient pressure. Okay, the exhaust pressure will be equal to the ambient pressure. So the expansion in the nozzle can be done up to the ambient pressure because we are using a convergent divergent nozzle. So what are the parameter values? Diffuser isentropic efficiency is 90%, combustion efficiency is 98%, nozzle isentropic efficiency is 99%. Ambient condition, temperature is 220 Kelvin, pressure is 20 kPa, so a high altitude. Combustion chamber, there is a pressure loss of 4% of the combustion chamber inlet pressure. So whatever is the inlet pressure at in the combustion chamber, it gets reduced by 4% at the outlet of the combustion chamber. Intake area of the engine is 0.1 meter square. Inlet Mach number is 3. And then we have a standard fuel calorific value of 43,000 kilojoule per kg and air fuel ratio of 20, which is on the low side. So there are certain steps in the problem. So we need to find out what is the air mass flow rate, because this is from one of the exams. So I had given steps. Generally, if you are just solving to find the characteristic, you will try to find only the thrust and thrust specific fuel consumption. Okay. So in this case, we also wanted to I also wanted the students to find out what is the air mass flow rate or mass flow rate of air, what is the maximum pressure in the cycle, what is the maximum temperature in the cycle, what is the exhaust velocity, and then subsequently the total thrust and specific fuel consumption. So obviously this is a non-ideal cycle, non-ideal ramjet, because we have efficiencies which are not 100%. So accordingly, we can draw the cycle here, as you can see on the right. I will show you here, and then we will use this. Okay. So ambient condition is A. Ambient temperature TA is 220 Kelvin. Ambient pressure PA is 20 kPa. Okay. Then in the diffuser, there is compression, and we go from A to 0, 1. Okay. After compression in the diffuser. So if the diffuser was an ideal diffuser, we would have gone from A to 0A. Okay. So because there is frictional loss. So instead of going to 0, we go to 0, 1. So the enthalpy remains constant. The stagnation enthalpy remains constant in the diffuser, as we know already. We have discussed multiple times. So the stagnation temperature also remains constant. So the T01 is at the same temperature as T0A. Okay. Now for defining the efficiency, what we do, that also we have discussed multiple times. We artificially create a point on the pressure line P01. P01 is the constant pressure line passing through 0, 1 point. Okay. So we artificially create an extra point which is on the isentropic process line from A to 0, but cuts the constant pressure line P01. Okay. So this efficiency, isentropic efficiency of the diffuser is given as T01S minus TA by T01 minus TA. Okay. So that is how we have defined the isentropic efficiency of the diffuser. So from 0, 1 to 0, 2 is the heat addition in the combustion chamber. Ideally, it should have been constant pressure, but because there is a little bit of pressure loss, 4% pressure loss, so we have shown here a pressure drop. Okay, so going from P01 to P02. Then we have the expansion in the nozzle going from 0 to 3. Again, because the nozzle is Non-isentropic, the entropy increases. So instead of going to 0.3s, we go to 0.3. And nozzle efficiency we know is defined as T02 minus T3 by T02 minus T3s. And this stagnation temperature at 0.3 point still remains same as 0.2. Okay, even though there is frictional loss, only the static temperature changes and the velocity changes, kinetic energy changes. So stagnation temperature T03 is equal to T02. So they are on the same line. So anyway, coming back to the problem, we'll keep this diagram open and we can proceed step by step. Okay. It's not a difficult problem. So if you just proceed step by step through the processes, we will be able to solve the problem. So first we have to find out what is the mass flow rate. Okay. So mass flow rate we can find at any section, but it is easiest to find at the inlet because all the properties are known at the inlet. Okay. So at the inlet, mass flow rate can be written as m dot a. So anyway, the mass flow rate is constant throughout the system, apart from addition of fuel in the combustion chamber. The airflow mass flow rate is constant. So at the inlet, m dot a is equal to density into area into velocity, rho into a into v, right? So rho at the inlet into a at the inlet. So intake I am denoting by the subscript a. Okay. So rho at the inlet into area at the inlet into velocity at the inlet. Okay. So velocity at the inlet is equal to Mach number into speed of sound. Okay. Because Mach number is defined as velocity by speed of sound. Speed of sound where? Speed of sound at the inlet. So speed of sound Ca is root over gamma r Ta. Okay. So velocity at the inlet is Mach number into root over gamma r Ta. Okay. So we need to find these values to find the mass flow rate. Density rho a is equal to Pa by RTA and everything is known. Okay. Ambient pressure is given as 20 kilopascal, so 20,000 pascal. R is equal to 287 kilojoule per joule per kg Kelvin, and Ta is 220 Kelvin. So if you plug these values, you get density to be equal to 0.3168 kg per meter cube. Please go to 3 or 4 decimal places at least. Okay, otherwise, there will be a lot of error. Even small changes may lead to lot of error. Okay. For example, I was trying with later on, I was trying with gamma value of 1.33 instead of 1.333, and finally I saw that the thrust has deviated by more than 100 Newton in the final result because of the small approximation. So at least 3 digits should be taken. Anyway, so Mach number is 3, Ma is 3, gamma is 1.4, area is given as 0.1 meter square, R is 287 and Ta is 220. Okay. So if you plug these values, you get the mass flow rate as 28.2568 kg per second. So it's not difficult. So next we have to find out the maximum pressure. So how will we proceed with the maximum pressure? Finding the maximum pressure. What next has to be found? Where is the maximum pressure? What is the maximum pressure, or where does it occur?
Just at the inlet.
At the
Just after compression, before combustion.
yes. So at the exit of the diffuser. So in this diagram, which point is this? 0, 1, right? The point 0, 1 is the highest pressure. You can see also from the diagram that P01 is the highest pressure that is achieved in the cycle. Black line is the cycle, right? A to 0, 1, 0, 1 to 0, 2, and 0, 2 to 3. So P01 is the highest pressure. So how to proceed then in the problem? Nikhilesh?
So from diffuser efficiency, first we will find out what is the pressure at 0A.
What is the pressure at 0A? Okay. Pressure at 0A is not required. Temperature at 0A is required. I think, yes.
Yes, sir.
Maybe. No, temperature also I don't. So what will be the step? You are correct that diffuser efficiency we have to use. So from diffuser efficiency, what will you find next?
Sir, first we have to find T0A, then we'll be knowing T01.
T0A we will find. Yes.
Then
Then
T0 is, it will be equal to T01.
correct.
Then by
T01.
diffuser efficiency, we can find T01S.
Correct.
Then we can find P01.
Correct. Good. So these will be the steps, right? So first we will find T0A because the relation between T0 and TA, which is the relation between stagnation and static temperature, is based on velocity. Velocity is already known. Then our Mach number, which is known. Then T0 is equal to T01, so we can find T01. All the steps are correct. So from T01 and TA, we can find T01S using diffuser efficiency. Then using the isentropic relation between 01S and A, we will find the relation between P01 and PA. So this is PA. So that will give us P01, correct. So that is what we will do. So maximum pressure is P01. Okay. So diffuser efficiency is T01S minus TA by T01 minus TA. Okay. Or you can rewrite eta D into T01 minus TA is equal to T01S minus TA. If you take TA common, eta D into TA, T01 by TA. So whatever steps you have given is correct. I have just gone in a slightly different way. T01 minus TA minus 1 is equal to TA, T01S by TA minus 1. Okay. So TA gets cancelled, so we are left with eta D T0A by TA minus 1 is equal to T01S by TA is T01 by PA to the power gamma minus 1 by gamma, where gamma is the gamma of air. So if it is gamma of air, I am just writing it as gamma. If it is gamma of gas, I will write it as gamma G. So this part, and in this part T0A by TA, we know that this can be written as 1 plus gamma minus 1 by 2 into Mach number square. So at A, Mach number is Ma. 1 plus gamma minus 1 by 2 Ma square. Then there is extra minus 1. So this minus 1. So minus 1 gets cancelled. Eta D is 0.9. So this is equal to P01 by PA to the power gamma minus 1 by gamma minus 1. Okay. So now you can put the values. Gamma is 1.4. Mach number is 3. Okay. Again 1.4 by 1.4. And diffuser efficiency is 0.9. So if you solve this, you get P01 by PA is 29.1108, or P01 is equal to 582.217 kilopascal. Okay. So this is the maximum pressure in the cycle. So you can see how much increase in pressure is occurring. Almost 30 times, 29 times increase in pressure is occurring just by the diffuser. Okay. In other previous problems, if you check, you will see that compressor is compressing with a compression ratio of 10, 20, something like that. But here, because of the very high inlet velocity, very high supersonic velocity at the inlet, the diffuser itself can compress by almost 30 times. So obviously no compressor is needed. Then the question is how to find the maximum temperature. Okay, so what will be the next step in the problem? How will we find the maximum temperature? This data is given. Okay, this is the diagram. Maximum temperature occurs where? At 0, 2 point, right? From TS diagram, we can easily see. At the outlet of the combustion chamber, we have the highest temperature. So T02 is the highest temperature. So typically in design problems, T02 will be given, but in this problem, we have to find T02. So how will we find it?
Use the combustion efficiency relation.
combustion efficiency.
No, the air fuel ratio and the T01.
So we have to do the energy balance at the in the combustion chamber, right? We have to do the energy balance using the air fuel ratio, which is given to us. Generally, we find the air fuel ratio, and the air fuel ratio is given to us. It's the same energy balance that we always do, but now the unknown is different. T02 is the unknown, and F is already known. Okay, that is what we will do. This diagram be open. So maximum temperature is T02. So for finding T02, first we need to find T01 for the energy balance. Okay. So T01 by TA is equal to T0A by TA. Actually, it should have been found previously also, but we actually directly solved for T01. Otherwise, it will be already known. So T01 by TA is T0A by TA, which is 1 plus gamma minus 1 by 2 ms square. So T01 is equal to TA, which is 220 Kelvin, into 1 plus 0.4 by 2 into 3 square. So this comes out as 616.0 Kelvin. Okay. So now we can do the energy balance like we have done for all the previous problems. The same energy balance. So the energy released by the fuel is fuel air ratio into the combustion efficiency into the calorific value, okay, per unit mass flow rate of air. This is equal to the enthalpy at the outlet exit of the combustion chamber, which is 1 plus F. 1 plus F is the mass flow rate into Cp of gas into T02 minus enthalpy at the inlet, which is 1. 1 is the mass flow rate into Cp of air into T01. Okay. The F is given as 1 by 20. Since air fuel ratio is 20, so F is 1 by 20, 0.05. And combustion efficiency, all the parameters except T02 are given. Beta V is 0.98. Calorific value is 43,000 kilojoule per kg. I am writing this in kilojoule. So if you write this in kilojoule per kg, Cp also you have to write in kilojoule per kg. If you write this in joule per kg, then accordingly Cp also you write in joule per kg. You have to be consistent with the units. Otherwise, it will lead to error. Okay. So 43,000 kilojoule per kg is equal to 1 plus 1 by 20 into 1.148 kilojoule per kg into T02 minus 1.005 kilojoule per kg into 600 kilojoule per kg Kelvin. Sorry, CP units as kilojoule per kg Kelvin. Into 1.00 minus 1.005 into 616, which is T01 we have found. So here only unknown is T02. So we find the T02 value, which comes out to be 2261.556 Kelvin. Okay. So if you compare with previous problems or other types of engine, you will see that combustion exit temperature is quite high in this case because there are no turbines after the combustion chamber. So we can go to a very high value of combustion temperature as we have discussed yesterday. And the advantage is that we have a very large enthalpy available for expansion in the nozzle. So the exhaust velocity in the nozzle is quite high, the exhaust velocity that is generated. As a result, the aircraft can fly at very high velocity. So here we find that it is beyond 2000 degree, 2000 Kelvin. So this is the maximum temperature in the cycle. Next is the exhaust velocity. To find the exhaust velocity, what will we do? We will use the nozzle efficiency. Okay. That is standard. We know already how to do it. So nozzle efficiency is T02 minus T3 by T02 minus T3s. Okay. So now we can calculate what is T02 by T3s because P02 pressure is known. What is the value of P02? We have been told that there is 4% pressure loss in the combustion chamber. And we have calculated P01. P01 we have calculated as 582.217 kilopascal. So P02 will be 96% of that. So 0.96 into P01. Okay. And P3 is equal to ambient pressure because we have a convergent divergent nozzle. So that is also known. Okay. So T02 by T3s for this isentropic process is equal to P02 by P3 whole to the power gamma minus 1 by gamma, where gamma is the gamma of gas, 1.333. Here, if you take 1.33 instead of 1.333, you will get a big error in the final values. Okay. So this is equal to 0.96 into P01 by Pa whole to the power gamma g minus 1 by gamma g. You can replace the values. Okay, 0.96 into P01 by Pa we have already calculated. Is 29.1108. You can directly replace the value. 0.96 into 29.1108 whole to the power 0.333 by 1.333. So, and T02 we have also calculated 2261.556. So this gives us a value of T3s, which is 984.231 Kelvin. So now we can use the efficiency of the nozzle. So 0.99 is the efficiency of the nozzle. 0.99 is equal to T02, which is 2261.556 minus T3 by T02 minus T3s, which is 2261.556 minus 984.231. So only unknown is T3, so we can calculate T3 and it comes out to be 997.004 Kelvin. So once you find T3, we now know T02 and T3. So we can find out what is the change in enthalpy. So this will give us the velocity. Okay. So V3 square by 2, the kinetic energy that is generated is equal to CPG T02 minus T3. Okay. CPG is the specific heat, constant pressure specific heat for the gas, which is 1.148 kilojoule per kg Kelvin. Okay. So this gives us V3 because all the other parameters are known. V3 is equal to square root of 2 into 1148, which is CPG, into T02, which is 2261.556 minus T3, which is 997.004. So here again, you have to be, I have seen a lot of students make mistake. They write 1.148 and their velocity comes out to be a very small value. So you have to be careful with the units. You are using SI units, so when calculating the velocity, you have to write in joule per kg Kelvin. Otherwise, you will get wrong value. So V3 comes out to be 1703.9397 meter per second. You can see that this is a very large value. Okay, this is a very large value. Although the intake velocity itself was quite high, we will see that the intake velocity itself is quite high. The exhaust velocity is very high. So for calculating the thrust, the fifth question is how to calculate the thrust, or what is the thrust. So thrust is equal to mass flow rate of air into also momentum at the exit minus momentum at the inlet. So m dot a 1 plus a V3 is the momentum at the exit, and momentum at the inlet is m dot a into VA. Okay, so m dot a 1 plus a V3 minus m dot a VA. So we have to find VA. We have not done it previously. We could have done it previously. We have not done it. So VA is equal to Mach number into speed of sound, ma into root over gamma at TA. So 3 into root over 1.4 into 287 into 220. Again, R you have to put as 287 joule per kg Kelvin, not 0.287 kilojoule per kg Kelvin. So the intake velocity was 891.944 meter per second, which is equal to Mach number 3 at the ambient condition. And you can see that the exhaust velocity is much higher. So now if you put the values here, m dot a we have already calculated 28.2568 kg per second. F is given to us 0.05. V3 we have calculated 1703.9397. And VA also we have calculated 891.944. Okay. So we'll get the thrust in Newton. It comes out to be 25,351.79 Newton, which is equal to 25.352 kilonewton. So this is the thrust, total thrust that is generated by the engine, not the specific thrust. If you want to find the specific thrust, you have to divide this by the mass flow rate, or if you did not multiply here by the mass flow rate, you will get the specific thrust. So in this case, specific thrust will be somewhere around 900 something Newton per kg per second. Once you divide this by 28.25. And final question is to find the thrust specific fuel consumption. So thrust specific fuel consumption, by definition, this is the amount of fuel required for unit thrust generation, or mass flow rate of fuel by the thrust that is generated. Mass flow rate of fuel is equal to fuel air ratio into mass flow rate of air. Okay. And TSFC then becomes F into m dot A by capital F, thrust generated. Okay. So all the parameters are known. F is 0.05. Mass flow rate of air is 28.2568 kg per second. And thrust is 25,351.79 Newton. Okay. So if you solve this, you get 5.5729 into 10 to the power minus 5 kg per second per Newton. So as we have already discussed, we generally write TSFC in terms of per hour instead of per second, so that we get more practical values. Okay. We understand how much fuel is required per hour of operation. So to find that per hour, we multiply it by 3600. So it gives us the value in this case of 0.2006 kg per hour per Newton. Okay, so this is the fuel consumption per hour per Newton of thrust. You can obviously find out the overall mass flow rate of fuel also, the fuel consumption, which is F into m dot A. So 0.05 into 28 point something. So it will be 1 point something kg per second. Okay, that is the mass flow rate per second. So this is how you need to solve a problem. Okay. So due to lack of time, we will not solve more problems on this in the class. But so as I said, I will try to find some more problems and let you know. And I have also uploaded a few problems today. You can go to this problem sets, which I have just uploaded right now. Few problems are there, just for practice. So you try to solve them on your own, and then only you go through the solutions. So there are problems on each type of engines. One problem, one or two problems. So turbojets. Another turbojet, then turbofan. Similarly, we have on turboprops, ramjets, and pulse jets. So you can go through these problems. And I will try to find some more problems from the book. Otherwise, these problems plus what we discuss in the class also should be sufficient to give you good grasp of the material, because the solution of the problems are standard. It should give you the proper understanding of the material. So then there is another set here. One more problem which was missing in the original set. I've added. So solve this problem. So this finishes our study of system level. So basically system level study, thermodynamics. So what we will start next is brief discussion on the three major components of a gas turbine or a jet engine, which is the compressor, then the combustion chamber, and at the end of the course, the turbines. Okay. So these are the parts that are left. Briefly, we will go through each of them. We will try to see how these are designed and try to do some mathematical analysis instead of going into too much, say, description. We will go through the description. We will try to understand how they behave, obviously, because without that understanding, we cannot do any mathematical analysis. But our target is to do a mathematical treatment of this material. Any questions? So as discussed yesterday, tomorrow there will be extra class to compensate for the two classes that we have missed. That will cover up the two classes. So it will be from 2:30 onwards, 1.5 hours or something like that, 2 hours. 2:30 onwards, 2:30 to 4:30. Okay. Schedule. And we will continue our discussion after from today's class onward. Okay. I have started checking your papers. Most probably I will finish this weekend, both the subjects. Okay. And at least gas turbine surely. TMTFE also I am trying to finish. And we can also have a brief discussion on the answers of the questions. Maybe tomorrow, then I can send you the marks by Sunday. So, any questions on the previous material? So the jet engine part will be entirely there in your syllabus. Okay, the industrial turbine will not be there, but the jet engine part will be there entirely because we have studied this after the exam. Only briefly we have started before the exam, so it will be there entirely in the final exam syllabus. So we will start with a brief discussion of compressor today. Tomorrow we will go into the mathematical part. Okay, you can see the slides, right?
Yes,
Sir.
Okay, so this is the previous slide we had discussed. So what we had studied is that in a typical jet engine or even in an industrial gas turbine, so there are a set of compressors after the intake, which is used for increasing the pressure of the intake air. Okay, and then we obviously have the combustion chamber to increase the temperature, and then we have a set of stages of turbine. So multiple turbine stages, which is used for running the compressor. So for industrial turbine, we have large number of turbine stages. Some of them are used for, or some of the power is used for running the compressor. Rest of the power is used for running the generator to generate power, or directly the shaft power is used for other purposes. But in case of jet engines, the turbine stages generate just sufficient amount of power for running the compressor. Okay. So the compressor comprises of multiple stages, and in each stage there is a slight pressure rise. Okay. So what we have done till now is that we have assumed that the entire compression process is a single process. Okay, entire compression process is a single process, as if there is a single device. But what happens is that there are stages, like multiple stages arranged like this. We will discuss all this in much more detail in the subsequent classes. So each stage increases the pressure by a small amount, say by a factor of 1.5. Okay. So now there can be two types of compressors. So one is known as axial compressor and the other is known as centrifugal compressor. Okay. So what is the distinction between axial and centrifugal compressor? The name itself is sufficient to make us understand. Axial compressor means that the flow direction will be in the axial direction and the compression occurs in the axial direction. Okay. So the flow comes in axially. The compressor is like your fan. So if you look at any fan, table fan or say exhaust fan or a ceiling fan, the air comes in perpendicular to the direction of rotation of the blades. Right, blades are rotating in a plane, and the air comes in perpendicular to that direction. So if you have an exhaust fan, you will see that the air comes in perpendicular to the direction of the blades. Then the rotation of the blades increases the velocity. Okay, the rotation of the blades increases the velocity of the air. Okay. So here it is not shown in this simple schematic diagram. So once the velocity of the air is increased due to the rotation of the blades, like your fan is increasing the velocity of the air. So then there is a subsequent stage, like part of the stage. So this rotating part of the stage is known as rotor. Okay, we will again study these things. Then there is a static part of the stage, which is fixed to the casing, which is known as the stator, which slows down the air like a diffuser and increases its pressure. Okay. So the work input occurs in the rotor, and the purpose of the rotor is to increase the kinetic energy, like a fan or like exhaust fan or any of the fans that you see, table fan. Okay, you will see that the air velocity is increased in the axial direction. Now, if you have a subsequent diffuser stage where the air velocity is slowed down gradually and the pressure is increased, you will get increase in pressure. So This is the mechanism. Again, in the next stage, again velocity is increased. Again, in the static stage, stator, again the velocity is used up. The kinetic energy is used up for increasing the pressure. So gradually, in each stage comprises of this rotor and stator, and in each stage there is a net increase in the pressure. Okay. So this type of device is known as axial compressor, where the flow comes in axially and also goes out axially. There is another type of compressor where the compression occurs due to the centrifugal action. Okay. So what happens is that the flow comes in axially, like it is shown here. The flow comes in axially. However, the direction of the flow is changed. Okay. It changes gradually from the axial to the radial direction. So it comes in perpendicular to the plane in which this stage is rotating. This is known as impeller. Okay. Instead of rotor, in this case, this is known as impeller. So the impeller is rotating in a plane and the flow comes in perpendicular to that. But the direction of the flow is changed from that perpendicular direction to the plane of the impeller. So it moves out radially. Okay, gradually it is changed and it moves out radially. And because of this, there is an increase in velocity and pressure. Okay, when it moves out because of the centrifugal action. And then subsequent, so there is an increase in pressure in the impeller itself. Then there is a subsequent diffuser stage, which also, or a diffuser, which slows down the velocity, and there is a further increase in pressure. Okay, and then this high pressure fluid is passed to the combustion chamber in both the cases. So this is the basic difference between the axial and centrifugal compressor. So there are advantages and disadvantages of both. We will study both of them briefly. We will start with the centrifugal compressor, try to do a mathematical treatment of the centrifugal compressor, then we will go into axial compressor. Axial compressors are more like turbines. Centrifugal compressors are slightly different. Okay. So the main advantage of centrifugal compressor, can anyone say what can be important, like advantages and disadvantages, just by looking at the diagram or just from basic intuition or basic understanding of on what we have discussed? Can you say what will be? So what will be a disadvantage of the centrifugal compressor as compared to the axial compressor?
Less pressure ratio.
Centrifugal compressor, less pressure ratio. Why less pressure ratio?
Sir, because
there
the
will be-
direction of airflow changes frequently, and there will be a lot of pressure losses.
Not really. The direction of airflow change is actually a problem, but it is not a problem in terms of pressure.
Sir,
Single
at a
stage.
single stage, we have a large pressure difference, so the backflow is also
In a single stage, we will have a large
pressure difference, pressure ratio.
Yes. So centrifugal compressors can. So that is actually an advantage. So centrifugal compressors can lead to quite large increase in pressure. You want increase in pressure, right? So you can increase the pressure to a much higher level by using a single stage of centrifugal compressor as compared to axial compressor. So for the same overall increase in pressure, you will need less number of stages of centrifugal compressor. So say in one stage there is around 4 times pressure increase, whereas in a one stage of axial compressor there is only 1.5 times pressure increase. Okay, so as a result, you need much less number of stages if you are using centrifugal compressor. Why you can get more pressure increase in the centrifugal compressor? Because the blades are acting over a longer length on the centrifugal compressor, okay, as compared to axial compressors. So the entire air gets compressed throughout this journey from the say vertical direction or from the axial direction to the radial direction. So large pressure increase can be obtained in centrifugal compressor, reducing the length of the engine because you will have less number of stages. That is an advantage. Okay, but still it is not used. You will see that all aircraft nowadays use axial compressor. So why it is not used in the aircraft? This centrifugal initial designs were made with centrifugal compressors, right? So both, so this UK design by Frank Whittle was based on centrifugal compressor, and the German design by von Owen was based on axial compressor. These are the first two engines that were developed. So nowadays, no jet engines use centrifugal compressors. What can be the reason for that? It means that there must be a strong drawback. Why? Otherwise, less number of stages would have been beneficial, because less number of stages means less weight. But still, no jet engines use centrifugal compressor.
So like drag will also increase due to its large size.
The cross-sectional area is very large as compared to axial compressor. Okay, if you want the same air flow rate, the intake area has to be same. So if this intake area is equal to this intake area for the same mass flow rate of air, you want the mass flow rate to be same for a certain amount of power and fuel air ratio. So if this both intake area are same, then the cross-sectional area of the centrifugal compressor is much larger. Okay, as a result, there will be a significant increase in drag, which is very harmful of operation. Yes.
Sir, the pressure difference across the impeller,
Yes.
it is directly related to speed at which it rotates. Is that correct?
Okay, I cannot hear. Can you speak louder? It is directly related to
So the speed of the compressor, speed of
speed
rotation.
of the impeller. Yes, it is related to the speed of the impeller.
So say if we have a higher speed, then we can have a higher pressure ratio. Is that correct?
That is also correct. Yes.
So say since it is a smaller engine, they can actually rotate at higher speed because of low inertia.
Then
So I mean, why is it a disadvantage? I mean, length of the compressor blades, even if it is reduced, we can compensate it with higher speed.
no, that is fine. But still, your say if you are having an intake area, certain intake area, say this is the intake area, at least some additional cross-section area will be required, right? Because you have to deviate the flow in the axial direction for this compression to, in the radial direction for the compression to occur. So your area of the impeller is always going to be larger than the intake area. It is not going to be exactly equal to the intake area. It is always going to be larger than the intake area. Then you have to have the diffuser also, which will even increase the cross-sectional area further. And cannot also keep on increasing the velocity to very high value. So ultimately, see, you are still means connected with the turbines also, okay, which are subjected to high temperature, and there is a maximum stress which will limit the, like, beyond which there will be significant creep that is occurring. So the rotational speed you cannot indefinitely increase because of stresses. Anyway, even if you have smaller impeller, the intake area will also decrease. So to keep the same intake area, always you will have the cross-sectional area more as compared to axial compressor. You cannot avoid that because you need this extra portion. So you look at the diagram. So intake area is this flat portion. So always you need the extra curved portion for the compression to occur, even if it is much smaller, still you need it. But and another point is that you need the fluid to smoothly change the direction. Okay? You cannot just abruptly change it in a very small distance. Then there will be large pressure losses. So you want the flow direction to change smoothly. So at least certain length is required for that to occur. Okay. So a lot of design implications are there. And then this additional area due to the diffuser. So as a result, the cross-sectional area is always going to be much larger. Okay, so that drawback is there. Is it clear, Nikhilesh?
Yes, sir.
There is another drawback. What will be another drawback? If I want to multi-stage this, obviously one stage is not sufficient. It may give a pressure rise of 3 to 4. But if we need pressure rise of 30, okay, pressure ratio of 30, then we need multiple stages. So multiple stages is very easy to be done in axial compressor because the flow direction is amenable to that. So you have flow coming out axially and again going to the next set of compressor blades. axially, again coming out axially, again going to the next set axially. Here the flow comes out radially. Now you have to change the direction again to the axial direction, right? And then again you have to pass. So you need some length for changing the flow into axial direction. Here I am. This is showing only one stage, but if you need a multi-stage for modern engines, then again you have to change the flow direction to axial, and then you have to again pass the air to the next set. Again, the air will come out radially. Even passing it into the combustion chamber, you have to change the flow direction to axial direction from the radial direction. So it adds complication to the compressor, means overall engine. Okay, so that's why it is avoided. But sometimes, like it previously, aircrafts have been made with this. One way to do is that you have multiple axial stages and then one centrifugal stage. Okay, but still that drawback about the cross sectional area remains. But at least multi-staging difficulty is not there. But now no modern aircraft uses centrifugal compressor, but we'll still study it for historical reason. All modern aircrafts use axial compressor. So what happens is that you have a fixed duct size. You will see that any of the engines, so the duct size is fixed, right? I don't have turbojets. Put turbojet picture. So all the sizes of the compressor blades and turbine blades fit within that. Okay, so and very less drag is there for the engine. Okay. No blockages are there. Basically, the air comes in and goes out, but here there is a blockage at these points. There is a drastic increase in. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
When did the connection get lost? I was discussing about. So I had answered your question that you have heard, right, Nicholas?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I was saying after that there can be uses of centrifugal compressor if you have multiple axial stages, then one centrifugal stage to decrease the number of axial stages. But still it will increase the cross-sectional area. So nowadays no modern engines actually use centrifugal compressor. No modern jet engine means jet aircraft. So all of them use axial compressor, whether it's a military aircraft or a civilian aircraft. Okay, all of them use axial compressor. Although the number of stages will be much larger, so length of the engine will be much longer. You can see here, so many axial stages are there, but the cross-sectional area is less, and there is no abrupt blockage in the air. So there is no, so the air comes in smoothly and goes out smoothly. Here there is abrupt blockage of air at these shoulders. So this leads to very high drag for centrifugal compressor-based jet engines. So it is not used. So modern engines look like this. You have multiple stages of compressor blades. These are the rotor blades, axial compressor rotor blades mounted on the shaft. So this rotates. In between each set of rotor blades, you will have static blades, which are mounted on the casing, which will not rotate. So the rotor blades increase the velocity of the air, and the static blades uses up the kinetic energy to increase the pressure. Again, the next set of rotor blades increase the velocity of the air. Again, the next set of stator blades increases the pressure by decreasing the kinetic energy. Each set of rotor blades is like a fan, but with more number of blades. Like normal fans, we have very less number of blades. Here you can see the number of blades is much higher and they are much more curved because we can get much more pressure increase because of that. So we will start with centrifugal compressors. Mathematical part we will start from tomorrow. Okay. So to summarize our discussion, brief discussion today. So compressors are used in gas turbines and jet engines to pressurize the air before it's sent to the combustion chamber. If you do not pressurize the air, you will not get any net work output. We have two types of compressors, centrifugal and axial compressor. What are the features? Centrifugal compressor flow comes in axially, we have seen that, and goes out radially. High pressure ratio can be obtained in a single stage. However, large cross-sectional area and difficult to use multiple centrifugal stages due to radial direction of exit flow. Okay, so these are the advantages and disadvantages. On the other hand, axial compressor, the flow comes in and goes out axially. Okay. So drawback is that lower pressure ratio per stage, but advantage is that lower cross-sectional area and it is suitable for multi-staging due to the axial flow direction. Okay. So we will, I think we can stop here today. 3-4 minutes are left and we will start properly tomorrow. Okay. Start practicing the problems that I have given. And I have also updated the notes, so up-to-date notes are there on this side. Okay. Stop the recording.